Computers have taken over almost every aspect of our lives, but should they play a role in our education? Can computers be beneficial to the learning process? Over the past 25 years, St. Paul's has incorporated technology into the curricula from a somewhat different point of view of other schools. Since much of the technological advancement in academics has focused on taking the place of the teachers, St. Paul's was free to ignore the bulk of what the industry was creating, and instead to concentrate on the technology which would fit into or enhance what was being taught here. Computers were first introduced at St. Paul's in the 1970s. The computers back then were very bulky and slow, only capable of making rudimentary calculations and editing text. These computers had a huge learning curve and had to be based in a laboratory. The first personal computers came around in the 1980s, but they were not used on a daily basis and were still kept in a computer lab. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, computer technology advanced, creating the first easy-to-use sensors. These sensors could capture data from real-world experiments. They would pave the way for the high-tech equipment we see in our science classrooms today.
We use Logger Pro a lot to collect data, and it's been a great experience for my students to be able to watch data changes as they're doing an experiment like the pH lab. And that is a great thing for them to be able to visibly see what's going on with whatever they're measuring on an actual computer screen versus just writing down numbers and then having to make a graph later on.
Then, in the late 1990s, the Internet was created. Technology became increasingly cheaper and more accessible. The school designed an electronic writing classroom with a 1 computer per student ratio, as well as a multimedia teacher workstation and projection system. This opened a huge window of opportunity. These rooms became doors to whatever could be accessed and projected. The learning process was no longer restricted to what was read in textbooks. Throughout the past decade, computer technology has become more advanced, and search engines such as Google, Yahoo, and Bing has surfaced. Information about practically every topic imaginable is now at the fingertips of students. Many teachers worried about the quality of the information students are researching.
When you search for something via Google or Yahoo or Bing or what have you, not only are you getting kind of the surface level of what's out there, but you're also getting sites of different levels of accountability, different levels of credibility. And when that comes into play, I think that's actually a really good teaching moment for us as teachers, because we can talk about, all right, what's the difference between a .com, a .org, a .net, a .gov? How does that affect the way that we view the information on a particular site?
I think it's more dependent on the teacher creating an assignment or project or questions where students can go out and collect information, because you need to know how to gather that information, but that you can't just type in the question and then automatically get the answer. So the teachers need to be kind of cognizant of how they're asking students to use the technology.
This computer technology plays an important role in our education. With this level of technology, we can experience the world outside of the SPS bubble. We are able to see what is happening in real time. Personal computers can be both a blessing and a curse. They allow students to take notes as well as reference the outside world to the material in class. Unfortunately, students tend to abuse such power. Social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter have taken over the World Wide Web. These sites tear the students' attention away from the class discussions. Many students will also go online shopping, read books, as well as find many other distractions during class. More than 90% of students admitted to visiting websites they shouldn't during class, and 50% admitted to doing it frequently. Teachers are aware that students visit these sites, but there is little to be done without causing uproar among the students. Some teachers are beginning to ban personal computers in class because they often distract the students more than they help them.
I do not allow my students to use a laptop or any sort of phone or tablet during class.
It's difficult to be disciplined and just work in one aspect when you just one click ahead. You have Facebook, you have Twitter.
In reality, teachers should not have to go to such extremes to prevent students from visiting websites not related to class.
It should be that you want to be engaged with class. I think, you know, if I'm doing my job as a teacher, I'm hopefully designing lessons that are interesting enough for students to be engaged with the material.
Teachers should be educated on how to integrate computers into their classroom in an interesting way. For example, in Mr. Edwards' class, he prefers to use social media to his advantage.
One of the best things about Twitter is you have to think about concision, right? You have to be able to express your ideas in 140 characters, and that can be really helpful in a lot of ways. But you also have to think about, all right, who's going to see this? How can I make connections with other people, right? Are there, you know, and it's a great repository of information too. I mean, the number of news outlets, the number of, you know, political figures that are on there, there's a lot of information that is out there for consumption through social networks. And if we can bring that in as teachers and show students, like, look, you don't have to watch the evening news to be well informed. You can do it by having a Twitter account. You can do it by having a Facebook account.
Ms. Alo also offers a way to engage students instead of just reading a textbook through a program called Prezi.
You can embed videos into it, and so if you're talking about a particular concept like the respiratory system, you can then put a link to a video that explains visually what's going on with the respiratory system, so students can learn about it in terms of the voiceovers and then the main bullet points, and then they can visually see it that way. So I think it helps for all different types of learners to use that technology to get the most information.
These are just a few examples. There are plenty more creative and fun ways of learning with technology, and teachers just need to be taught to tap into these resources. Although there is one thing we need to be careful of.
Well, it's funny, the dependency on technology, where if we lose projectors or internet, suddenly classrooms ground to a halt, where in the good old days they could write on a chalkboard and still continue classes. It seems we're overly dependent on technology.
Computers are tools we use to further students' learning. We can't let this tool become a crutch. Computer technology can be effective when teachers integrate it into the curriculum in a fun and interesting way, but it should not control the class. Computer technology can be very beneficial to the students during the learning process. Teachers just need to know how to utilize this tool to their advantage.
That's all, folks.